Hello, hello. We are live on yon internet. How you doing out there in the land of the great YouTubes? I'm of course Matthew Reese coming at you from Scottsdale, Nebraska, on this lovely early summer's day. I am joined as always by Matt McGibson.
Hey everybody, and I've actually got my friend with me here today. This is Dan.
Hi guys.
I don't know if you can hear him. He's right there. He might just chime in every once in a while because he's actually really into comic books just about as much as I am. Although he doesn't have a store near him anymore. I don't even. Have you ever had a comic shop near you?
No. There's one in Hollywood. That's the closest thing I have.
Yeah. So yeah, it's great to have him here, and it's great to be back. Who are we having tonight? So it's Douglas Ernst.
We're going to have two guests. We're going to have two guests figured out. If right, our fingers up. One was a Dr. Science Wizard, who I have no idea who he really is, but he is a fellow on YouTube, on Twitter that I follow, and he does great head sketches, really strong, bold line work. And I was been looking forward to interviewing him about how he looks at art for a while, but he is suffering from rolling brownouts, which of course is an ailment of those in the overpopulated states. We out here in the sticks don't really have problems with that anymore. Haven't for my entire life.
What? So there's like too many people in one area, so the internet has problems?
Not just the internet, electricity. You'll get a lot of people in a congested area if there's not enough. If they have a hard time generating enough power for that, then they'll have circuits and sections that'll go down sporadically. A lot of times, failing in one mark will cause failings in the next section, and on and on. So in the grids, I should say. And so yeah,
I like what you're doing with your hair this week. I wanted to make sure I mentioned that.
Me?
Yeah, because like I don't know, you're kind of wearing it different than usual.
Well, it's just down. So.
Oh yeah, you have it in on a knot, don't you? Most of the time.
Yeah, I usually wear it back in ponytail, but this week it's been largely down, and the reason for that, at the risk of just turning into a fashion podcast, one of those hair things. But the reason is that it's very humid in my area of the state this week, and so I've got these flyovers. Right, my hair is super curly, so it's actually more manageable down than it is back because I wear it back and it just looks like I got the poof right here, and it's just not been worth the trouble of trying to tame that. So it's sort of laziness, but it also sort of makes me look like a rock star. So.
Yeah, it's actually kind of what my friend Dan does right here quite a bit. Sometimes he'll do the same thing as you. He'll put his hair up in a bun.
Yeah, I can't do the bun. I just can't do it.
I think I've seen you do it like once or twice.
No.
That or like you hide, like he just puts there's like a fold or somewhere in the back of his head, like this orifice. So he just shoves all the hair in there.
I will take the ponytail here, and occasionally I'll stick a pen back there. I'll forget where I put my pen. That happens.
See, I'd be worried about constantly losing those things.
It's a weird experience, that's for sure.
So, in terms of geek culture, what's been going on this past week? I guess Godzilla was last week, wasn't it?
Yeah, have you seen Godzilla? I have not seen it yet, though, so no spoilers.
Yeah, I'm not gonna do anything. It was pretty interested in it.
So was John Wick.
John Wick was great.
Pretty good. It's kind of confusing. The movie itself is a lot of good action in it.
Yeah, Keanu Reeves is blown up. If you haven't seen that, like he became the darling of the internet.
Yeah, I did see that. That's a strange one, that's for sure.
Well, it's kind of interesting because he's like, what is he, 50 at this point? I still can't it's hard to me to believe that it's the same guy that was Neo and he's in Bill and Ted. All this stuff that he was done over the years, and now he's got like that one iconic look of like John Wick.
Yeah. Well, I think John Wick is just what he actually looks like. I think that's a big part of that one.
Yeah, but see, like he looks. But But it's also, I think it's also his personal appearance has changed over the years because I'm wondering, did he look like how he did for Neo? Like, is that how he looked normally in 1999?
Well, I'm pretty sure he wore a beard when he wasn't on set, if I recall correctly. Maybe I'm wrong, but
I've also been working on, like, because I showed you last week I was working on my one page for my web comic. I don't know, last week or earlier this week or whenever it was. I've just been working on that little bits at a time. You know, if I'm not playing video games or like working on something around the house or playing with my younger siblings, I've just been practicing on my inking and different shading techniques and stuff like that. And that's been that's been a constant in the past week is working on this page, and then I'm thinking about how I want to lay out the next one. It's a lot of fun. I'm definitely happy that I'm doing this as a hobby. You know.
so are you doing like, do you have, I know you have a general story laid out, but are you doing like a page by page scripting on that, or how do you figure that?
What I do, okay, so for the longest time, what I did is I would write everything out in Word. But the thing is, I felt like it gave me a better sense of what I was doing if I made like rough sketches of how I was laying out a page and what was going to go on and what shot was going to be there. And, you know, it's all
Thumbnail.
subject to change. None of it's set in stone. And but yeah, for the longest time I would just do Word. And what happened with that is that things would get way too wordy because my mind was set on writing things down instead of yeah, because you know, comics is a very visual heavy media, and there's actually a lot of dialogue that works in comics that doesn't work anywhere else. And that's why some of the lines in Watchmen, because they were directly ripped from a comic, some of them sound like they benefited more from being in a comic book than being said aloud.
No, I think that's absolutely true. One of the things that I don't know if you've ever seen Twilight.
I don't want to.
That's
Dan,
fine. It's fine.
Twilight?
It's a horrible movie. It's a horrible movie, and the book is worse. I haven't read all of the book. I have to be completely honest. So if any of you guys out there in internet land, you're just like, hey, the book's not bad. I read through probably halfway into the first chapter, and it's abysmal. But that being said, the straight fact of the matter is that I did not that the book particularly well written, and one of the issues of it is sentence structure. Stephanie Meyer has real hang-ups writing sentence structure that flows. But when the movie came out, one of the things that I commented to some fans who I knew, they were trying to talk about what a great deal it was and everything, and I said that it was not so great, and the dialogue was terrible. And they snapped back at me. The dialogue was right out of the book. So maybe that worked better on the page.
I think it was actually you were saying that you actually started like a bit of a family schism with you, didn't? Or
oh my goodness, yes. I've told this story before, but I'll tell it now. Not a lot of people are tuning in here, but you know that's okay.
you shared the link on Twitter. We have to make sure about that.
Yes. So those of you who are watching, please share it on Twitter, share it on the Facebooks if you can get to that without too much trouble. But that being said, oh my goodness, yeah, my sister was a huge Twilight fan, and I just was merciless in the way I railed against the thing. And I brought her to tears one time talking about it.
Yeah.
You know, it was actually an interesting story that I had never heard of before. Is apparently 50 Shades of Grey was originally a Twilight fan fiction.
Yes.
I couldn't like I haven't actually ever looked it up myself, but you know, I was sitting there, you know, thinking about or this how did this raunchy book where like the entire gimmick is how dirty it is. It came from a fan fiction of children's or you know borderline like tween girl literature.
Well, because you haven't seen um the Twilight.
I still kind of get the idea. Like, you know, I know it can be kind of saucy and it's got like it does have that romantic appeal, but I'm thinking this person just went overboard.
Right. But I mean, like one of so in the second movie, one of the things that's played up is there's sort of or the second book, as well. There's sort of a love triangle between the mortal chick, the vampire dude, and the werewolf dude, right?
Mhm.
So basically, Bella has to decide whether she's going to um, mope after the guy that finds her tasty all the time, or the guy that only finds her tasty 3 nights out of a month.
So I always thought it was just one night out of a month that the werewolf,
Oh,
that
no,
the curse of the werewolf.
the full moon lasts for 3 nights.
That was actually something, because I remember you were actually pretty big on werewolves when we were and vampires when we were younger, Dan, weren't you?
Still am.
But yeah, it's such a cool concept, you know, and I feel like vampires have they have sadly kind of become synonymous with Twilight, and it's going to take like at least a century, or not really. It's going to take like maybe it's going to take like a generation or two to get vampires back to where they were. But you know, you get all these other really cool vampire ideas, like you know, of course you have classic depictions of you know, Dracula, you know, Castlevania doing him justice. I think I like the way he was in the Castlevania Netflix series. The other thing I really liked was I was thinking about, yeah, in Killer Instinct when they did their 2013 reboot, they had this vampire lady. What I love is that the way that she would fight, if she had these gauntlets on her that she was a vampire and she could do blood bending or like an avatar, but basically you can control blood and swing it through the air. But like she had these gauntlets on that would turn her blood into metal. So as it like dripped off of her body, she would swing it like liquid metal and use like create scythes and blades and things like that. It was really cool. She was really hard to play as because instead of having like a ton of special meter that this would come off of, it would take from your health. Yeah, that's just yeah. I've always got to get my love in for Killer Instinct. Let's see. Yeah, let's see. What else has been going on this week in nerd culture? Oh yeah, I'm a little. So I think it's both really cool and really lame what they're doing with J.J. Abrams with that Spider-Man thing. Because on the one hand, that's the cutest thing ever—a man writing a Spider-Man story with his son. You know, but on the other hand, I think the problem is it's like, you know, Marvel saying, oh, we just don't make enough money to pay our artists and writers, and you know, oh yeah, here's like one of the top directors in Hollywood, and he's going to be making a book with his son.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's part of the name recognition. They're assuming they're going to sell more on the thing there, and you know, prestige title stuff. But I think a lot of Marvel's issue, if I might be so bold, is that they're putting out so much content. I think rather than keeping their margins larger by keeping their production tighter, right?
Honestly,
Only hiring
what they need to do is pay people better. Also, if they cut down on the ton of titles, like I'm fine if they just want if you just want one Spider-Man book a month instead of 15. Yeah, I don't think it's as much of an exaggeration now though, because like even if you compare the Bat Family books, but I think the Bat Family books actually have a lot more variety because you know you look at the Bat Family, you have Nightwing books, you have like two. I think what is it? We're at 2 Batman books right now, right? With not counting like crossovers and special events and stuff like that. Like talking about you have Batman and you have Detective Comics, and then you got and then you have like the other shoes like Batgirl, yeah, Harley Quinn. I don't know why she's sometimes considered part of the Bat Family. I think that's just I don't like the push for Harley Quinn being a hero. That's kind of a me thing though.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I think that's silly.
yeah. Well, I mean, funny for a character, you know, it's a clown. But oh yeah, here comes Shinobi Raccoon. Great guy on Twitter. He's just joining the cast. So we must return Vampire Hunter D for salvation.
Vampire Hunter D was the first anime I ever actually watched all the way through. I mean, other than like Japanimation stuff growing up in the '90s and the '80s, you know, like Voltron and friggin' oh come on, not BattleTech. I'm spacing off right now. Anyway,
I actually remember a lot of
first anime movie that I ever actually watched was Vampire Hunter D, and it's a classic. Robotech, yes, thank you. Ooh, that's me being stupid. I just did that.
yeah, Robotech. I think I swear that might have been one that Carl was talking to me about because Carl is nuts about mecha anime.
Yeah. Well, and like well, the 80s was kind of a weird time too, because like there was Americanized like Japanimation that was in the late 70s and 80s was kind of everywhere. Speed Racer and Pole Position and a bunch of projects that were definitely like they were made by Japanese studios, but they were made for American audiences or secondarily for American audiences. So they were more kind of universal.
Yeah,
And
you know
like
what's funny is how
I noticed, I'm
because
sorry.
so I was talking to my friend Dan here about this same topic of like when we change things. Like Carl showed me, there's a Tetsujin 28 in Japan, and we turned it into Gigantor. And then there's Giant Robo, which was changed into Johnny Sacco and his giant robot.
Right, right. And
Yeah,
a lot of
Racers.
things that were they were like
Yeah.
secondarily anyway geared toward the American market, and it was oh, come on I can't remember. There's another one really big one that was in the 70s. It was like Champions or something. Anyway, it had a very feel, but it didn't feel like I want to say foreign at all. It was just such a part of that 80s kid culture, right? And then at the same time that was growing was the more obscure, really Japanese kind of stuff, Ghost of the Shell and Vampire Hunter D and Akira, and those kind of things that were more fringe. And I wasn't exposed to any of that until I was older. And Vampire Hunter D was the first one I actually sat through, and I just love that one. It's great. I haven't seen it in probably 20 years, but it was so much fun. Very kind of eye-opening, I guess I'd say, because
It's so weird. Like I know you're like 20, you're like almost exactly like 20 years older than me, but it's still so weird to hear when you go like, oh, I haven't seen that in 20 years, and I'm just thinking it's like my entire lifetime since this guy's seen the movie. Yeah, me and Dan are also like roughly the same age, like a day, like literally a day's difference.
yeah, I am one of the aged ones, and that's okay.
You're the elder.
So we have had there are, according to the tally, if it's correct, and it may not be. Um, okay, Shinobi Raccoon's got to take off. I appreciate you coming in and joining the chat. We're here every week, so feel free to come back on next week. Indie Dave Comics is actually coming up to talk about odd, and so I'm actually very excited about that one. And we might even get his artist on at the same time. So, um, yeah.
Let's see. The other thing is that if you didn't know this, Carl has actually started opening commissions.
Yes, he mentioned it earlier today, and I tweeted it out about it. So, if you guys are looking to have somebody to do art for you, Carl is quite a guy.
Yeah, I'm thinking of like again, if I had the money, like I'm building up a lot of money as I'm going on because when you're not spending money all the time, like I've just been playing, doing a lot of like rereading things, replaying things, and saving money up, and it builds up pretty quickly when you're not spending it. And I'm already looking at cars to purchase. Some of them are in better condition than others, and I'm wondering just how much I'm like, I want to have one that'll last me a couple of years rather than it'll last me like one summer. Yeah, because I don't know. I'd like to have something, even if the school I'm going to is not very far from my house, like the one that I'm planning to go to for my 4 year. But I don't know. I would just like to have one for several years rather than having to go through all this again. All right.
Hang on a second. I just realized I'm having some technical difficulties myself. So give me just a second, and Doug Ernst just messaged me that he is maybe ready to come on, and I thought I had sent him the link already, and I hadn't. So hooray for me.
No worries. Accidents happen. Coven just joined in the chat. No, Dan, you would love Coven. He's a metalhead. I think he's a teenager, but really great guy. Except for, and then you go to his Twitter. Let me see where he is. Yeah, his picture is it's this metal cover with Peter Griffin's head with Sansa's glowing eyes. Yeah, I think his competition was to I wanted to make the worst thing ever seen or something like that because it was a famous metal cover.
Yeah.
I think it's actually the one he's using right here. It's like this skull with a cross through it. Yeah, let's see.
That's cool.
In the meantime, Reese has actually built up quite the subscriber base. We went from like having 3 at the beginning of this podcast, and now he's at like 60 roughly. So, you know, I'm real proud of him.
That's great.
Yeah, I'm actually pretty pleased with that. I think we have a fun show, and you know, right now we're making it covered. You know, so it's not quite as put together as I would like as things go on, but that's okay. We'll make it. We'll figure it out. So.
Yeah.
I do want to go ahead and while we're waiting, I do want to go ahead and mention that for those of you who are interested at all, and I will put a link in the chat. Our Patreon for my comic book company, Ideal Comics. We right now we're having some problems with transitioning all of our website over, and so our webcomic has been down. But we are publishing our archives of this current story, 3 pages a week. So and then we'll have another page of our Joe Jobs coming up next week too. So tomorrow should be out. So that's if you guys are interested in checking out our webcomics for a funny look on our superhero universe, feel free to dig into that. It's not as, I gotta be honest, it's not as pretty as Soul Finder, which Doug will be on in a moment to talk about, but it is funny. And I don't think Soul Finder is going to be funny, but we'll find out. Maybe I'm wrong. I'll ask Doug when he gets here. So, but here I'm going to go put that in the link so you guys can check that out if you want. Earlier, I was sharing the Patreon the other day on Twitter, and I noticed I went back to it, and I'd used backslashes instead of forward slashes like it was a DOS prompt. And so I was like, why doesn't this hypertext link work at all? Because I used the wrong slashes like some sort of old man.
I hate that backwards slashes exist in the first place. Like, why couldn't we just have one?
Well, it's because they're different. I mean, that's the bottom line. And so the way I try to remember it is that the backslash, right, points back into the past when everyone used DOS prompt. And forward slashes point forward into the future when everyone will use internet protocols. So that's how I try to remember that.
Yeah, I think is great is so Danielle is not going to be tuning in this week because she's actually in Disney right now.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and what I think is funny is I just saw that Avi the Trap on Twitter is also in Disney.
Cool.
Avi's kind of camera shy, but he's a great dude. Or not camera shy as in like I think like live streaming is not his thing.
That's not everyone's. We need to start bugging Rust to come on. He's got his own YouTube channel now.
I tried several times. He said he's just live streaming.
Yeah. Well, we'll see. We'll keep working on him. Build that confidence up.
Because right now he's one of my favorite dudes. You know, he's kind of I guess I consider him a friend. He's we talk on the regular. He's on the Discord server. He shares his artwork on there, or sometimes like stupid little doodles he's making, or sometimes it's stuff that he's proud to show off. Memes.
You'll have to shoot me the link for that because I decided to get back onto Discord last week, and so I had a couple different servers I was on, and I went to bed check them up. So you'll have to.
I'll get you the link to it. But yeah, I've been. It's just amazing when you look at yourself, like you practice drawing and you're making like a conscious effort to get better. Like I was looking at some of my drawings from over a year ago when I was first thinking about getting back into drawing comics and cartoons, and I was just, and you know, I'm looking at them now and I'm like, these look horrible. Like some of the ones that I drew, like, you know, some of them I'm like, oh, okay, you know, I can see, you know, it's like a humble beginnings and whatever else. And some of the other ones was like, how did I ever think this looked like? Why did I ever think that was a good idea? And I even the way that it turned out, you know, like I just draw them and I was thinking, I was like, well, why didn't I draw it like this instead? That makes no sense. Drawing's just kind of funny like that, but you know, thankfully I've improved a lot and I'm pretty happy with the way that the page I'm working on is coming, and the next several pages I'll be happy with too.
Well, that's one of the things too that's really, I guess funny, I guess is the right word for it, or close to the right word anyway, is when you spend a lot of time doing a thing, you kind of look at it differently, you know? You, I don't know. For me, it's one of those things where it gets more enjoyable. And so for me, looking back at drawings I did in like the early pages of Forces, it's one of those things where, you know, Chris and I, we're not artists really. We're just a couple of guys that had some stories to tell and didn't have any other way to get it out. So we just did it ourselves, right? And sort of one of those things where you just kind of have to figure out, you know, what you're like in the middle of all of that. And on the one hand, I feel kind of embarrassed for people to see those old pages. And of course, they're down right now, but they're going to be going back up here in a while. But I feel kind of bad about posting about looking at those old pages. But at the same time, you know, without those, we wouldn't have anything. You know, it's just one of those things. Gotta just go with. You know.
One convention I went to at one time had this demonstration, or there was like a workshop or whatever, and it's like the first draft is allowed to suck. And I was just like, you know, it's something that my younger self would have never accepted. But you know, as you get older, you're kind of like, it's like, oh, you know, I'm getting older. It's not getting out there, so I don't care if it's gonna start out a little funky looking. I'd rather have it out there and, you know, grow from there. Oh, I'm a little parched. I'm gonna go get some water.
Spotlight. I don't think I'm familiar with those lyrics there, Easy Bake Coven.
There's a spotlight on the moonlight. Oh, it's their star storyteller. Hello, everyone. And she just popped in. I have to apologize to her because there was some inconvenient stuff with scheduling the stream earlier in this week. But yeah, she's an artist, really good with kind of the black and white stuff that I'm trying to learn. If you haven't seen
Yeah, I actually am really excited to have her on. I was looking at some of her stuff and it looks really, really sharp. I'd love to talk to her about her technique and her inspiration. So, Star Storyteller, please grace us with your polite presence on the week. We had a whole thing and it was, well, it was embarrassing, but true. It's just what happens. But yeah, we had Matt had talked to her to let everyone else know Matt had talked to her about it, and I had not told Matt, but I already booked everything for this week. And then I found out a few hours ago that our first hour guest couldn't make it for various reasons that are, you know, pretty legitimate. And we talked about that earlier, rolling brownouts. But at the same time, you know, we're in this issue, and that was kind of the thing on that. Okay. You are here. She says I'm not doing anything. Hang on just a second. That might be a possibility.
I'm not.
Okay.
If she could join us.
Okay, hang on just a second here. Tell you what. Let me. Are her messages open for DMs?
Do you? If I think mutually, because I was able to talk to her in DMs.
I know I follow her. I don't know if she follows me. So okay. Let's go ahead and have her on for oh, that's the wrong link.
You just gave her the virus.
Oh no. She doesn't care about that, I'm sure.
Man, yeah, people are just too sensitive about bricking their computers. I think that's such a funny term, bricking. Like they talk about if you send someone a virus and like make their system completely inoperable, they call it getting bricked because that's what your computer is essentially turned into. It's not going to work again. Maybe, yeah, just go and throw it at throw it at you. computer aids. that's a pretty
Who said that?
started.
I went ahead and sent you the Hangout link. That way, it gives that's perfectly fine for you to come on and we can talk to you briefly since we have a full half hour before Doug was going to come up. That way, he doesn't interrupt his other plans. He said he could move things around, but we'll go ahead. If you want to come on and talk, I'd love to have you come on and everything. So I didn't want to presume earlier, but I mean, that's fine. If you are up for it, the link is in your chat there on Twitter. So, so Daniel, you're standing over there aside while we're killing a little bit of time here before whatever happens next. Would you mind sharing, stepping up the microphone a little and sharing a little bit about your history in comics?
Okay. Like what? Like what I started on? Or?
What got you into it, man? Yeah. What was your first?
I've always been interested in. I've always just really liked.
So that's just superheroes in general.
Superheroes in general. Always been into like the bigger, like Hulk was always my favorite because he kind of reminded me of myself when I was a child.
Yeah, you lose your temper. The funny thing is, I think I was worse than you, and like I connected more with I think Raphael was me because we were both really into Ninja Turtles.
We were angry little children, so Hulk really kind of was a big part of what got me into him. And then eventually I got into Superman because
I remember getting into Batman because we were both the Lego Batman game.
Batman.
Like a friend of ours had it, and we were playing. We played that a lot, and that got us into like the world of Batman. And when we got in and got introduced to everybody, please welcome Star. Now she is in the chat. A lot more ceiling looking than I ever thought, but yeah, that's okay.
No, that's a secret squirrel. I'm a secret squirrel. My husband asked me to keep me anonymous, so.
Yeah, don't worry about it. I don't show my face on here either. As far as you know, this rock is my face.
How are you guys doing tonight?
Now.
Oh, sorry, Matt. I was gonna say I don't guilt anyone for using an icon on the YouTubes or the internet, but I've had my face online for almost as long as there's been an online, so it's a little late for me. So.
Well, I technically did have it on there, but then somewhere, I don't know. I mean, if people are, you know what? People found a freaking he will not divide his flag with even less. So I'm like,
yeah, that was
if
disturbing.
people are determined, they'll find it.
Well, oh man, that is one of my favorite internet stories ever. But I'm not going to get into it right now. Storytelling. Anyway. Tell me a little bit about. I don't mean to interrupt Daniel earlier. But no, it's fine. It's fine. Daniel, who's sitting there with Matt, was talking about getting into comics because he really dug the Incredible Hulk and just always having an interest in them. And what about you? What got you into art?
To be honest, I'm more of a manga, animation kind of person. I like to say I'm almost like a frustrated animator or lazy, one or the other, depending. But I love Miyazaki films. I love Disney films, less lately, but I've also really liked anime from the time I was 10. And it was interesting because my mom can kind of look at my art a little more objectively, but she was like, you weren't necessarily talented, but you kept doing it. So that's kind of interesting. So mine's kind of, I had to work at it and really get it right and stuff like that.
Talent was something that made me crazy when I was younger because I thought that I can't do this because I wasn't born good enough at it. Like I could see one of my siblings or somebody else, just instantly do something and be good at it from like day one. And I wasn't that kind of person. I am a bit of a slow learner, but it bothered me as a kid. And as I got older, I kind of was like, I don't have time to sit around and wait for talent. So I've got to work towards it.
Mhm.
That's one of those things too. Like I mean, like it's a craft, right? It's an art. It's not just about a talent. You work at it, you get better at it. I mean, I'm a terrible artist, right? But I'm still better than I was 10 years ago. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
That's one
Definitely.
of those. I keep working at it. I've really enjoyed. When Matt first mentioned that you might be interested in coming on the show, I'd seen you in live chats and stuff a little bit, but I hadn't really followed your stuff up at all. And at Matt's suggestion, I jumped into it and looked at it, and man, I love your line work. It's got a lot of strength, a lot of emotion in it. What would you consider to be your inspirations for the way you take care of lines?
Line work is I'm lazy. I think I just keep pressing on. My strokes are all about pressing as hard as I can, and maybe I'll get the emotion on the other side. But you know what? Now that you say that, Glenn Keane is a huge influence on me for sure. And you would know him from the main animator behind Beauty and the Beast. He was Beast,
Okay.
Tarzan. He also did Ariel too. So he had a range of different things. But his draftsman, if you ever see behind the scenes stuff of his line work, there's that he would sculpt, and I think I'm kind of the same thing. He would sculpt these characters, 3D characters, out of a flat artwork. And so I think it's kind of similar to that. I like to carve it. I don't just do one line. People who can do one line or do it very softly and kind of build it up, I admire that so much because that's really beautiful. I haven't quite learned that.
Now, how long?
That's one thing you're a fan of Doug Naples stuff, but have you ever watched him ink?
Oh,
It's
I
kind of
love.
like that. Where him and a brush is something I'm terrified. I would be terrified to use a brush the way he does.
Yeah, I think he was talking about like how expensive some of those are. He's like, yeah, and my cat comes in here and starts licking the brushes, and he's like, no, that costs like $200.
Yeah.
Well, it's actually interesting because I just picked up a couple of. I would try to use like micron, tiny little things, and I never liked the way that my line art looked with that. And there's some El Cheapo, like $4 little ink, brush inks, and I was just floored by how well that works so well. And it isn't really that expensive. I got it from Hobby Lobby. I mean, they were like $4 each or so. It was like $8. And I really liked it, especially if you find you just have thick lines. You just stay thick.
Yeah, I've actually used Micron for everything I do. That was Reese when you were asking about that the other day, like what pen I was using. It's Micron stuff.
Yeah, microns are pretty popular. I've pretty much, because I do so much digital alteration because my stuff's garbage. That I work on stuff. I'll actually use like just El Cheapo Papermate felt tip pens and Sharpie fine lines because everything I have is going to be converted to electronics. So an issue for me because my stuff's not that great anyway. So that's kind of my weapons of choice on those. I'm really impressed with people that do the whole brush thing. That's crazy.
It's really not that.
I'm sorry.
No, it's really not. It really isn't as expensive, and it wasn't as hard as I thought it was going to be. I really should just let me go find the pins because if they really weren't that expensive, I'll get the pencils here. Just make sure you store them horizontally, not vertically, or else they go bad. From what I was reading. Let me see. One is called. One is Faber-Castell Thin Artist, and it's just black. The other is the Pentel, and they're really nice. And they were not that expensive either. And they're actually pretty. The other one, not the Faber-Castell, but that one's like super fine. And a lot of people say, well, it's a little hard to control, but you can get some really delicate little lines with those, but they aren't expensive at all.
That's like I'm always nervous about working with brushes because I like how you can tend to get a lot of like, for example, with black brushes and stuff, you can get like a ton of stuff ink down at once.
Hmm.
But I'm always scared of how like because I don't feel like I never feel as in control as I do with a pen or especially with a pencil.
Right. But yeah, I would just say try it out because a couple of dollars is not going to kill you. A couple of, and oh, by the way, talking about Matthew, Reyes.
Reese.
Reese, I'm so sorry. I would definitely say that do it with cheap supplies and really work on that because, there's nothing wrong with practicing with inexpensive items and then mastering those. It just gets harder once you have to do digital programs. Actually, what programs do you use?
I actually, I'm not what you call wealthy. So I have been nursing along an ancient copy of Paint Shop Pro 8, which was the last version that Jask had before they were bought out by Corel. And
oh, okay.
it was designed for Windows 98, and I've been using it ever since. And it's the thing I love about it is that it uses both raster and vector tools. So
Ooh.
kinds of different kinds. I can do one layer that's raster effects and one layer that's vector effects. I don't have to swap programs. I'm doing a lot of coloring in Krita for our webcomics because it's got some really cool coloring tools.
Oh,
but
cool.
Effects aren't as intuitive in Krita. So I will usually do my flats in Krita and then swap it on over into Paint Shop Pro to do the effects that I want and letter it there so I can use the vector tools to do my lettering and tweak my balloons and everything. And then convert those into a PNG for the web. So that's what I've been using a lot. And like I said, it's been fun, but it's a little weird.
Yeah.
Well, go ahead.
I'm amazed that you're hanging on with something from 1998 because like a lot of that software hardly even works anymore.
Yeah, it's impressive.
It kind of reminds me because I know you said that you hadn't really seen it, but Strong Bad, like from the Homestar Runner cartoons, all of his stuff, his big thing as part of the show is he answers emails, and all of his technology is from like 1983. Yeah, and then he has like all of his, it's like his computer is like, it's a big beige brick, and then he's answering things using command, like typing commands like run email.exe and stuff like that. Why does all my 30-year-old technology keep breaking on me? Yeah, I'm happy that they're coming back, but they're taking their time because of having to learn Flash. See, that was something I kind of gave up on when I was younger. Is Flash that can be kind of intimidating. I mean, could be worse. Like my brother does Blender stuff, and Blender looks like a rocket launch panel. Yeah. Our brother T, he just yeah, I mean he tries modeling and stuff like that, but I just take one look at it, I'm like, I'm not gonna do nope, going away.
That's what video tutorials are for.
Yeah, that's one of the things that's really crazy too, like having, come from the past into the present is how much access that people have. And I use it too. I mean, YouTube you can learn anything there, right? If I'm a bit of a shade tree mechanic, and if I run into a problem I can't figure out looking at the manual, then sure enough, I can find some mechanic on YouTube from Tennessee who's figured it out already. And a huge benefit. And it's the same for like a lot of graphics programs. And the funny thing too is like I don't use obviously Photoshop, but because they were such a standard, a lot of the techniques are applicable across programs. So stuff I can look at a Photoshop tutorial and still figure out how to make something similar. So Star, let me ask you a quick question here.
Sure.
What you want to do? I mean, you said you feel like you're a lazy animator. What are there any particular projects, like dream projects, that you have in mind you'd like to work on?
Me?
Yes.
I have this one very elaborate one. It kind of, I don't know if we're trying to avoid silly Comicscape silliness right now or not, but it's interesting. It's actually a great type because you're having Doug in his project, right? The
Yeah.
Soul Finders.
Yeah, he's going to be here at 8. So, well, my time, which is, I'm not sure what that's your time, but it's 45 minutes.
She lives in the past.
It's Pacific time.
Yeah, she's from the Pacific, so she lives in the past.
Okay, so it'll be 7 for you.
Okay. So the project I have has it has all the things that I think Comicscape may not, because I'm trying to find who my audience is. I don't want to trick people into thinking it's one thing that it's not, but it's also kind of figuring out how to do that. But it has politics, it has intrigue, it has romance, and it has action and fun stuff. I'm not ready yet. I'm still in the outline. I should just get off my butt and do it, but I've been a little preoccupied at the moment.
That sounds super intriguing, honestly.
I don't know how, but
No. Yeah, I don't. So, like, I don't know how much you know or are familiar with whatever the heck I bring to the table, right? I've been making comics on an amateur level for almost 20 years, right? And not making any money at it, mostly doing free web comics. Our main web comic was Forces of Good and Evil. It's a silly teen dramedy about kids in superhero and supervillain high schools, and
that's awesome.
It's a lot of fun. It's down right now because we're migrating servers and we're having some headaches with that. But with it, it's part of that's just one component of a huge superhero universe that we have, and we have a couple of printed anthologies that we've self-published and stuff like that too, that go into some of our history in our universe. Right now, doing an Indiegogo, that's another story from that. But the idea about how, like politics and intrigues and all that kind of stuff, man, I love to see that in stories. And I think a lot of people undersell the political nature of storytelling intrinsically because it's partisan propaganda for politics. And I'm not about partisan propaganda, but you can't get away from politics. It's not possible. And I think facing that face on, that's interesting to me. I'm very interested to see.
So a quick synopsis is basically it's about a young woman. She's about 19, 20. I haven't picked her age yet. But she ends up, she was adopted from this made up East European country from there. And so she goes on a medical mission there and gets caught up in the political machinations of this country. It's and it kind of goes into basically the king is turning into the Punisher. His wife died. His wife and his son died in a bomb explosion, and he's just going after everything. It turns out to be this very elaborate ruse to get every last one. And so the story is basically balancing. It's about identity. It's about balancing justice and mercy. And it's also kind of, what does it mean to have family? So it's a lot of, that's the problem. There's so many themes, and I haven't narrowed it down. So
that is some rich soil you're tilling there. I'm excited to see where you do take this. That's great.
Yay! So for me, it's like well, it's kind of, there's a lot of anti-Soviet stuff.
Well,
so that alone.
Fine by me.
Well, and here's another thing too. It has a lot of Christian elements, but it also has a lot of other elements that would not exactly get published by Zondervan.
No. First of all, I would like to point out the only thing pink about me is my skin, and secondly, I'm
sorry, that was good.
Joke, by the way. And secondly, I think that you're right onto something with that. I don't know if you're familiar with Andrew Klavan.
Yeah.
One of the things he points out is that you can't tell an honest story if you're not honest with your story. and not all of life is church. So, and I totally agree with that perspective on that.
I will say
favorite fantasy author. I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say probably my favorite fantasy author is Stephen Lawhead, who's a fellow.
I love Stephen Lawhead.
And then you'll know he doesn't shy away from the ugly bits.
Yeah, he doesn't. Especially his Robin Hood series. People need to read that. I haven't finished it though. I got from Hood. I got to Scarlet. I need to finish Tuck. I haven't done that in a long time.
It's really good. I actually want to reread it. And I got to say, I'm a little biased because he takes Robin Hood and he moves it, 500 years earlier, or about 150 years earlier, and places it in Wales, which is where my father's family is from.
Yes.
My father's grandfather was born there, to be more specific. My granddad was the first generation born here. But I have a certain amount of personal affection for the land of my fathers. So I really got off on that book. That was really exciting for me.
Yeah. And so another thing about the book, I'm kind of I'm doing the most impossible part, which is kind of making a fictional Slavic country. So I'm kind of like, why am I doing this to myself? But it kind of frees me up. And I think it frees me up in a lot of ways, but I'm trying to use the history of what happened to the people there, just kind of get a vibe for it, and then explain why a monarchy would still be there to begin with. So go ahead.
I'm sorry, I was going to say, I love fictional geography. I think in terms of, especially like my genre is superhero comics, right? But that means we deal with aliens, we deal with monsters, we deal with, the undead, all that kind of comic book stuff. But that's my wheelhouse. But I love fictional geography and settings like that because it allows us to first of all story is metaphor, one, but us to metaphorize whatever, to use a metaphor for our own histories, right? Have to be tied into actual history because we're dealing with fictional cities and fictional places. So I grew up in rural Nebraska, right? But Gotham didn't seem foreign to me in the same way that New York City does, because I could go visit Gotham City in a way that I couldn't visit New York City because New York has its own hangups. But I could intimately know Gotham in a way that was different. And so I find that when you're dealing with fictional locations, fictional geography, especially in these fantastic settings, it gives us not only the freedom as creators, but I think even as readers, it gives us a different freedom to associate with something that we wouldn't necessarily have that same freedom to.
Right. And I've been trying to think, because I am so new, I've just been thinking, well, you know what, I should just do sketches of what I've been working on and just phrase it that way before even starting an Indiegogo at all, and kind of build a presence, online presence, kind of get that vibe, get it out there, because I'm a nobody.
I'm planning on starting with my webcomic, and then if I want to do a crowdfunder or anything monetary in the future, I don't know. I want to provide the people with something it's easily accessible by being free, and it's also going to be shared, by being a webcomic that's free.
Yeah,
That's hard. It's hard because I've heard from Clownfish TV. I assume you kind of know them at least.
Yeah, no worries.
Well, I know Keon, the male person in that group. He says, him and his wife have done webcomics a million years, and they're kind of like, it's very hard to do that, and it's very hard to move from free to monetary, because why? What's that saying? Why buy the cow if the milk is free? And I kind of understand that, but it doesn't mean that you can't try it. So
yeah, part of the way we've intended, and because we're a company of guys, right, that we've been working on this as part of an ongoing plan. But our ongoing plan was to introduce people to the universe for free, and then say, okay, here's our paid products, right? I mean, you see kind of the world in which these people live, and you get some of the implications of it. Then here's something that's different in the same vein, and hopefully you've bought into our world enough to wonder how, if we have these silly superhero high schoolers, how does that relate to these very serious crime stories you're wanting to tell too? And so kind of that's part of was I don't know if it's going to work, but it's been part of our marketing strategy for a decade. So.
Well, I mean, yeah, I mean, that's a way to do it. I don't think it's totally doom and gloom, but it is something to consider. I guess I'm just trying to figure out like what, like where to start, how to get there. Because I think part of my problem is making sure I can write it. That's why I'm hoping Micah Curtis, well, for one, I'm so excited for his project. I'm sorry to show it on a different thing, but it's the Inglewood. Go check it out. It's a black superhero and he's fighting crime in Chicago. Yeah. Anyway, but he wants to write for a living, and I would love to. I'd have to figure out how much his budget to write, but that would be really cool because I feel like but at the same time, it's also like, well, how much creativity, creative control you want too. So it's like, but because I feel like my writing is probably the weakest spot I have. I can do it, but I'm also dyslexic. So it's like, geez.
Well, I think that's one of the things too, where, I mean, if you have a really good story outline and you know what your moving parts are, especially if you can get some sort of operating capital to work on, hiring an editor or a script writer to come in and help you with the dialogue and or on it would be a really reasonable way to go about doing something like that. I know one thing that we're doing with Douglas Ernst has joined us.
Hello.
Hey, how's it going? Thanks for having me.
Thank you. I was just finishing up with one sentence, and then I have all kinds of questions for you.
Sure, no problem.
But what I was saying, Star, was that one thing that like we're doing right now with a couple of projects that we have in house. I've got an artist who's just he's writing some stories, and we're working on plots together. And I'm kind of editing for him on these projects, but I'm also going to be coming in and doing the dialogue for that too. And I think one of the things he's working on is going to be the ash can that we're going to include with the higher tiers on our plan if we make it to 500. So, but yeah, there are people in the indie comics community that do work as editors, and I know would love to come along and help you, put those finishing touches on. In fact, I love the bones you were telling me about. That I can see a real great story hanging on them. So.
All right. Well, thank you for having me. Do I just exit stage left over here, or?
Well, it is up to you. If you want to dip out, you are welcome to. If you would like to sit on the panel and chime in as you feel free. I would never kick anyone because we've never had anyone hostile enough to do it so far. We're a tiny little show.
Sure. He has kicked me when I ate popcorn and straight into the microphone.
That is true. I didn't kick you. I muted you until you finished your popcorn.
It hurt my feelings all the same. I will never forgive you.
And one time somebody's computer started screaming at us, and
it was Donald's. It turned into like a vacuum cleaner full of ghosts.
Yes, it was like possessed by a foul beast or something. I don't know. But anyway, Doug, thank you for coming on. I really, really appreciate it. I'm going to fanboy a little bit because you are one of my favorite content creators on YouTube.
Thanks, man. I appreciate that. I haven't been doing original content lately because all the Soul Fighter stuff, but I will get back to it soon.
But it's thoughtful, it's informed, it's literate. You don't stop yourself from asking even yourself the hard questions, and that is rare to find. We like to, human beings, I think, we like to build these echo chambers in ourselves and not push the walls of our own comprehension. And you're not one to shy from that. So I appreciate your content. And of course, I love having you on my tiny little talk show. Well, our tiny little talk show. I don't mean to be so Matt centric, but we're both Matts here, right, Matt?
Yeah, I'd say so.
Yeah, man, I like going on these live streams, talking to everybody. It's been really cool, and it doesn't matter how many subscribers they have. To me, it's just I'm getting to chill out with another dude, or if there's, women on the stream, chilling out with them, and it's just a fun time.
Mhm.
So,
Yes,
Doug.
a lady as well.
So, Doug, I'm sure you've talked ad nauseum about this, but how long have you been working on Soul Finder?
It basically, I started writing it last spring for the most part. I mean, I had the idea for it earlier than that, but I started talking with Timothy Lim, and then, as I've said on a few other streams, he had a very similar idea in his youth. There was a G.I. Joe contest, and he kind of wanted to have a G.I. Joe chaplain that essentially battled a black magic type Cobra figure. And so I was like, oh, okay, well, that's kind of like this, what I was thinking. And then from there, we were just like, thought it was natural to sort of team up and put something together because we were both spiritually and psychologically basically at the same, on the same wavelength. And I started writing in my spare time, like we'll just say like March, something along those lines. And then whenever I had spare time between the YouTube videos and blogging and work, I would try and block off some time and just chip away at it. And then I finished the first draft last October. We met up in Florida in Disney World. So our first meeting was actually at Disney World. And I was telling somebody else today, I was like, yeah, we like to like mix the fun with business at the same time, because I'm going to try and fly down to Bell County Comic Con in August. Tim will be there. So it'll be another sort of situation where there's fun, but then also some business stuff to take care of as well.
Well, before we get too much farther on, Dan Sakharov was in the chat and said he's looking forward to Soul Finder. So
awesome. Yeah, I can't thank everybody enough who's supported us already on social media. People are sharing things, liking things, commenting, and really they're the ones that are doing a lot of the heavy lifting in terms of spreading the word. I've done a few live streams. I haven't been able to do too much original content lately. I've been doing my thing on Twitter, but yeah, it's subscribers like yours that have essentially, I don't know what the monetary value in terms of what they've done is, but it's been a nice chunk of the orders that have come in. So I'm very grateful for everybody for helping out.
yeah, and one of the things that I'm just well, there's several of them. One of the things I'm so impressed with this project is that, first of all, you were able to keep it under wraps for so long. I'd have been singing at the top of my lungs the minute Tim Lim signed on to something of mine. I love his stuff. His style is so great, and it's so versatile. And what is it like working with Tim?
Wow, it's been a really cool experience, because this is my first time going through something like this. I never wrote a comic before. This is everything is totally new to me. So I obviously had a learning curve to go through, and then figuring out how to work with teams, how to work with artists and colorists and know their schedule and all that sort of stuff. You don't want to step on people's toes. You want to make sure you're being professional at all times. And so he made the process really easy for me. And it's just been really cool to bounce ideas off one another. I try to surround myself with really sharp guys who are veterans, who, if I come up with an idea, there's a very good chance that if they have a slightly different take on it, it may even be better than mine. And then I could adjust and actually make the product even better.
Now, remind me, because I feel like I should know this, but is Brett Smith doing your colors as well?
Yes, Brett is our colorist. He actually has another project. It's like a werewolf western called Blood that he's finishing up right now. I think he may be finished today. I'm not 100% sure. But then after he was done with Blood, he was going to start full-time on Soul Finder. He was juggling different things for a little bit, but he'll be full-time as soon as Blood's done.
Which sounds super exciting. Sorry, I got a message on my phone there, and so you are that blood thing, is he self-publishing that, or is that for somebody else, or what's the story with that? Because
No, he's got another. I don't know all the details, but he's got another creative team involved that he's doing that with, and I don't think he shared too many details. So that'll probably be coming out in the near future. I just know it's a werewolf western. I'm not 100% sure. I don't know if Chuck Dixon was the one who wrote that. I don't want to say for sure.
Yeah.
I know that Brett works with Chuck on different projects, but
If that is a Dixon project, I have to lighten my wallet for it. He's a hero of mine.
cool.
But yeah. So with that though, with Brett stays really busy, and he just keeps putting out top-notch work. Every time I see anything with his name attached, it's just I'm stunned by it.
Yeah, with him, I definitely, because we actually became, Tim introduced me to Brett basically when he was doing Jawbreakers. It was around that time, and Brett and I just sort of hit it off via the DMs on Twitter, and we're talking. Then we started talking on the phone about stuff, and because he's so busy, I basically had to let him know, yeah, like essentially a year in advance, like, hey, I'm doing this. I'm doing it with Tim. If you could just kind of leave your schedule open a little bit. I'm serious about doing this. And so I was lucky enough that he he trusted me that I was going to do what I said I was going to do. And so it worked out pretty well. Obviously, like I said, he still has some blood stuff, but he definitely left that window open to work on this. So I was blessed with that.
I gotta say, you got a top-notch team coming right out of the gate on something like that. Is that intimidating?
Well, it's weird because, like I said, they became friends. So it's like we are business partners. Sometimes you can't always be business partners with your friends. It doesn't always work out for numerous reasons. But with those guys, we were just so much on the same page. And like I said, with Tim, he literally had an idea in his youth that was very similar to my own idea. And so creatively, it was like that was a match. And then with Brett, he's a very direct guy. He's very blunt. He is very exacting, and I am the same way. So that's not always going to work with people. And so because we have the same philosophy in terms of what we expect in terms of a business partner, it was, again, we were on the same page, and everything was firing on all cylinders with those guys. And I use them as a crutch because, like I said, I don't know anything about shipping. I don't know anything about printing, but they do. They put out multiple books. Brett put out Clinton Cash, a graphic novel. He worked with Tim on Trump Space Force. Tim's done My Hero Macadamia. He's done My Hero Macadamia 2 now. And so they've learned all the logistical stuff. They've crunched numbers. And I was like, I need your help. And I wanted to send a message with this team because I knew, because I was a new writer, that if I put something out, they're going to be like, who's this guy? Or you're like, how can we trust, this particular dude? He's just putting something out just like everybody else is putting something out these days. And so I was like, no, I need to get a veteran team behind me. So they're like, well, if nothing else, if the writing isn't up to snuff, we know that Dave Dorman, Brett R. Smith, and Timothy Lim together, that is a pretty powerful trio. And so hopefully, Doug does what he's supposed to do. And, I'm biased. I think we're going to give people something that they could be proud to have on their shelf, that they could read 5 years from now and say, like, yeah, that was a meaningful story. And definitely the whole team gave 110%.
So when it comes to, I'm going to screen share and take a look at the campaign here in a second, but when it comes to the project, you mentioned that Tim had a similar idea and you had this idea. How much of the story is yours, and how much of it was a collaboration?
Yeah, so the story, all the characters, the story, that is completely mine. But the one thing that I will say is when I met with Tim down in Florida, actually Mark Pellegrini was also down there, his longtime collaborator. Mark's a great writer. I love Mark's work, and he actually. So this is no secret. I read the first draft that he did on Red Rooster, which was like late June, maybe just before the 4th of July. and everything that I saw that was Mark's was super, super sharp. Anyway, I gave a draft to Mark and Tim, and then they got back with me, and there were certain things that they sort of fleshed out, basically, or they said, like, well, did you think about, you have the skeleton, you got some muscle on it, but we think we could beef it up a little bit more. And so they kind of gave me some ideas and said, what do you think about this? What do you think about that? And I was like, yeah. And then so essentially it was like, well, okay, let's do your thing, beef it up, and then send it back to us. And so I did that, and then it was basically good to go. And that's sort of where we're at. But there were little things here and there that, like I said, Tim had a different angle on it. I was so close to the material that, in a weird way, even though it's mine, I paradoxically couldn't see all of the possibilities, because there's only so much time in a day. I could only do so much research. There's certain elements of the book where I'm just like, on some level, I feel like it's under researched, but you could just research till the cows come home. So, but like I said, Tim and Mark, they were very, very helpful in terms of giving me different angles, creative angles to look at.
Now, one question that I had too, of course, you had time in the service, and I know you were mentioning that while you were in the Army, and then a lot of your characters are Marines, right?
They're actually not Marines, but if you look at the Soul Finder uniform, it was very much inspired by the Marines' dress uniform. I always thought that was super, super sharp. So I was in the Army, but I was always sort of jealous of the Marines, and at least their aesthetic, their dress uniform was top notch, very, very cool stuff. And so I wanted the Soul Finder, the priestly outfit. It's got the Roman collar, as you can see, but I wanted to make it more militarize it in many ways. So it's got that red sort of piping that goes around, and it looks like something a Marine who became a priest might wear. So look, that it also mixes in the different branches, because these two men are particularly their Army, but then it also has the Marines element to it. So I didn't shortchange the Marines or the Army.
Which is something that, some creators like to banter on about which branch is the best, I suppose. But now, how much did your service and your time in the service affect the kind of story we're telling?
That's a really good question. I'm a big fan of, I don't want to say I'm like obsessed with it, but fascinated. I'm fascinated by ways that events in life sort of affect us at subconscious levels, that we're controlled in many ways by subconscious thoughts that we don't even quite comprehend. And so I'm sure that in many ways my military service did that in the 90s for sure. But then there's also my friends who stayed in after 9/11, Iraq War, Afghanistan War, all that kind of stuff. So I have all their stories. I've kept in contact with some key guys. There was one good friend who he didn't come home. He was killed by a sniper in Iraq. So those sorts of stories definitely, like I said, they affected me in all sorts of ways that are probably translated onto the page. And things weren't always a conscious decision, but again, it definitely it affected or shaped Soul Finder.
Very cool. Very cool.
How different was it to write fiction versus journalism, actually?
That's a really good question. So there are certain skills that could be honed in terms of organizational skills or disciplinary skills. So just my mind is organized in a way that sort of like approaches the creative element. It basically takes those elements that are important to writing for a newspaper, and then I could basically leverage those skills that I've used over the years to maybe make things a little bit easier for me creatively. But at some point in time, there's a departure between the nonfiction sort of stuff and the writing for a newspaper and then the creative realm, because I have to know everything about the character's past. So if you started asking me about Redder, Father Patrick Redder is the main character. Another one is Father Reginald Reggie Crane. There's another character called Officer Gregory Chua. And if you started asking me about what they were like when they were teenagers, what they went through, I have to come up with backstories for all these characters. And so I need to know them basically on a personal level. It's like I've created these beings in my head. And my goal in many ways is, if you were just like, yeah, tell me about Patrick Redder. What was he like as a teenager? I need to be able to answer that, even though it's not necessarily in this particular story. And so that's very different than working for a newspaper.
Well, I noticed that you are also going through the whole thing. You're 127% funded, which is amazing. For your campaign's been open since the 15th, right?
Whatever last Friday was, yeah, I think that was the 14th, maybe.
14th, yeah. So it's been less than 10 days, and you're fully funded. What's that gotta feel like?
So it's on multiple levels. I am very, very happy with it, because we made a conscious decision to have a very quote unquote lean campaign. So we don't have a whole bunch of perks or stretch goals, all sorts of that sort of thing. When things are essentially unlocked, the customers are seeing what they're paying for. So I already put in. I obviously paid Dave Dorman ahead of time. I've been praying Freudian slip there. I've been paying Brett R. Smith for his work, and he's a veteran. He's a very talented individual, and if you want talent, it will logically not necessarily be cheap. I want to pay Brett appropriately for the skills that he brings to the table. Same with Tim. So I have already put in my own money into this project. Now I'm just trying to recoup the costs, because comics are not cheap to make, independent comics, if you want to put out a very good product anyway. And so because we have this very lean campaign, we wanted to focus really on the story, really on the art. We didn't want to have bells and whistles. I've said before that this is not, it's like you go to a concert and they have the band with the pyrotechnics and the laser show. There's nothing against that, but I also like the bands that it's just, you're just coming for the music basically, and the singer's voice in person sounds exactly like it sounds on the album. There's not weird digital games that they're playing to make the guys sound better. So it's like we wanted to put a giant spotlight on the art and the writing, and I wanted to answer whatever tough questions they had about me, proving that I could be a good creative writer, give them something worth their money. So there's that. We actually don't have the international backers on there, although they can, if they're interested, email me at douglasernst@douglasernst.blog, and then I will take care of all the logistics for them after the fact. I did not want to be able to I didn't want to have to juggle both international and domestic at the same time while I'm trying to hold down a full-time job, do live streams, be a good husband, all that sort of stuff. So they will definitely get it, but the numbers do not appear on Indiegogo. So we'll just assume that most of the people, we'll say 85%, who expressed interest via email will actually want a book when I circle back with them and pay for it. So there's that. And then my YouTube channel has a nice, solid, loyal subscriber base who are awesome, but it's not a huge channel by any means. I think I have like 12,400 subscribers. A small percentage of them, of any channel, is going to actually want to put forth the money towards your book. But I think pound for pound, my subscribers are really coming through for me in ways that some people just they don't understand. They're just like, well, you should be making more money than this. And it's like, well, Tim and I, money's nice, but we didn't engineer or design our campaign to maximize profit. We engineered the Indiegogo page to, again, stress the importance of the story and stress the importance of the art. So if people are looking for Soul Finder cosplay costume priestly outfits, they're not going to get that. If they're looking for Soul Finder Father Redder and Father Crane salt and pepper shakers or whatever the heck, I don't know.
Mugs. They're asking for mugs.
Yeah, the salt, yeah, the Father Reginald Crane mug or something. Like, it's not going to happen. I really just want to focus on the craft of storytelling and the art.
I'm sorry to crack up, but the idea about exorcist priest spec ops cosplay just had it just. Sorry.
Yeah, well, there were people that were kind of, I don't want to say like annoyed, but they're befuddled that we don't have crazy insane perks going on or crazy insane stretch goals. And so it's been very tough to explain to people that I have nothing against campaigns that do that, but this was a choice that was made for a very specific reason. It's like, we have this really good book. It's made by veterans in the industry. It's made by a very talented artist in Timothy Lim, who's showing people kind of tools in his creative toolbox that he hasn't shown them before. And so I want to essentially drag their eyes away from things that are just not related to the story. It's like, I don't want to promote elements of Soul Finder that would be nice to have, like Funko Pop dolls or something, when I literally have not given people the story yet. It's like, can I just give you a really good story? There were people that were kind of upset because I don't know if upset's the word, but like, why don't you have, you need to be doing a whole bunch of autographs and all this. And I'm like, part of me is like, I'm humbled. I'm honored that someone would even want my autograph. But on another level, I'm like, you shouldn't even be thinking about my autograph on some level until I give you a story that warrants asking me for an autograph. Like, I'll give it to you if you want, but at the same time, I really just want to give people a story where they're like, thank you, Doug. That was a really good story. That's what means the most to me.
And one of the things, at the risk of seeming, I don't know, hoity-toity about it or something, when you think about the concept of a Catholic priest who's in the service of God and country, right? One of the things that's an element of Christian theology across the board is our tendency as humans to be distracted by the mortal world, right? Where that's just part of our existence. It's not the whole thing. And when we get caught up on what is seen, we miss what is unseen. And so for me, there's a certain cleanliness, a certain clarity in the fact that you have a very simple campaign telling a fairly, what seems to be a pretty straightforward story about men trying to find their way through a complex world. And there's just so many distractions in the world that you have the distraction, a low distraction campaign seems very much in key with that on a deeply thematic level.
No, thank you for saying that. I really appreciate that. I think that's something that maybe a lot of people, an element of the campaign that not everybody picks up on or even kind of gets, that, yeah, it actually, the way that we're running the campaign matches who we are as people. I've said, it's no secret, I'm Catholic. Tim is Catholic. The story was informed by our faith. It's not preachy. At least I don't believe it's preachy. It doesn't lecture people. It doesn't finger wag people that are agnostics or atheists or whatever. But yeah, the way that we're running our campaign is definitely, I would say, in line with trying to practice what we preach. If if you have these two devout Catholic guys that are putting out a book and they were just making it all about the cash, we gotta make $100,000 or we're a failure. Like, that would be weird. To us, the work itself is a virtue.
And one of the things that also is interesting to me is, if any of you guys out there in the internet world, out there in YouTube, YouTubetopia, you catch on this later and you just say, well, okay, I dig this. I want to throw more money at this project. Buy some and give to your friends. Yeah? I mean, because it's about getting the story around. It's about getting that hope around. So pass it on. That would be how I would pitch that if I was in your shoes, Doug. if people are just, if that they believe in this project so much, then just, hand some out, and I think that's, I'm excited for this. I'm honestly, it's one of those things, to be perfectly honest, I don't make bones about the fact that I'm not exactly the richest man in America, but this is on my July list for sure. So
Thanks, man. I appreciate it. And I was telling somebody else today, because the money thing keeps coming up. It's like, in my mind, there's a lot of people that are very excited about this book. So I feel an enormous amount of pressure to meet or exceed their expectations. But in my mind, it's like, okay, a lot of these people are very excited about this book. If I give them a very good product, if I ship it out on time or early, if they look at the actual physical, the book itself, and they're like, wow, this is square binding. Wow, all elements of this book, down to like how it's actually crafted and put together, is top notch. When I do another story down the line, that will be like a small army of happy customers who will be ready to go to bat for me. I'm mixing metaphors, but they'll be ready to charge onto the digital social media field of battle to then promote Soulfinder 2 and all that sort of stuff. So it's like, the money is nice, but it will come if I just give people a product that they are happy with.
So that actually begs the question, not to get too much in the weeds, we haven't even seen the first book, but you mentioned Soulfinder 2. What are your plans down the road? There's
a story that I have in mind. So when you have military veterans who happen to be priests could be sent all around the world. Being combat veterans, they have a certain skill set that could deal with physical threats as well. So it opens it up. There's an Indiana Jones-ish tale that I would like to tell. So I would definitely like to do that. Brett R. Smith and I were talking. We're on the same page about possibly down the road, we would like to tell a Vietnam era tale regarding Father Reginald Crane. I really like that character a lot. I think you can mine his past. I just think he's like a super cool guy. And so he's the mentor in this particular tale. There's a series of deaths in this town, and Father Redder is investigating them. And along the way, he is introduced to Father Crane, who wants to recruit him into the Soulfinder order. But yeah, we would definitely like to do more. I would like to explore, without giving too much away, essentially themes regarding love. I know that sounds weird. It's not going to be like a romance tale, but I think a lot of people they talk about love, but they don't even have a proper definition of love, or it's the definition itself is all over the place. So I wanted to explore that themes of like people's desire to belong to groups or tribalism, and the lengths that they will go to belong to something bigger than themselves, and how that can go awry. I would also like to explore, I know this sounds really weird, the virtue of obedience at some point in time. I've never seen a comic book explore the virtue of obedience. And so if I could do that in an exciting or entertaining or intriguing way, I want to challenge myself basically and do things where I don't see this being done in any other comic books. And you almost have to have a certain sensibility to be able to tackle very difficult questions in a way where people are like, I don't want to go there. That's going to be really hard to do. And so if I could push myself to my creative limits, then that makes me happy.
One of the things that I think is really interesting about that too is that we have I can't say this for certain, but listening to your content, you and I have chatted through the DMs and stuff a little bit, and looking at the kind of stuff you're talking about the story, I have a really hard time not believing that you're going to deliver a product that is both true to the action story genre and something that has the complexity and the depth that is going to keep people that are into that kind of story coming back for more. And that's one of the things I'm really excited to get this thing in my hands, because I think it's going to be that kind of that elevation where it's a simple story on the face of it, and it's also something more. And that's something I'm very, very interested for seeing there. So for those people watching back at home, I want to go through the available perks. We've talked a little bit about it because I have some questions as I'm preparing to make a purchase in the next few weeks. But you have the first level, that's just the book, right? That $15?
Correct.
Okay. And what is your shipping?
When is the shipping?
So what is it? What are you charging for shipping?
Oh, so let's see. I think it was basically, I think it ends up being like $21 if I'm not mistaken when you add the shipping costs in. It might be like 21 to 23. I'm not off the top of my head. I don't know, but what was I going to say? We tried to get the price point as low as possible. So this particular book this story is 56 pages, and then we're adding 8 pages of supplementary material. So you're getting a 64-page book, and like I said, we got the price point as low as we could. So Tim with My Hero Macadamia, he actually used that was a very quick, lean campaign in and of itself. And he took the numbers that he got from that campaign to then apply it to this one. And so it was one of those things where, sorry, I'm like losing track. Yeah, it's $23 total with shipping. So it's $8 shipping. But that was the number. He was like, okay, so if we're going to give people a 64-page book in total, we could get this is as low as we could possibly get it to reach as many people as possible. So I think when people see, well, one, the story itself, I think is worth it. And then we have all the concept art. I'm going to be writing an afterword as well. When they see the quality, the paper stock, the printing, the binding that they get, I think they're going to be like, yeah, this guy tried to do right by customers. He did what he could to make sure that people that were on a tight budget, people that had student loans, people that were working 2 jobs to put food on the table for the kids or whatever, like, and as far as an independent comic, this is a pretty good deal.
I think dude, 64 pages. That's awesome. Okay, so as a $20 tier, right? Is
Right.
this got a bookmark going on with that? Is that what I'm seeing, or?
There's a Dave. Basically, it's the Dave Dorman cover, but then and it has Archangel Michael on the cover as well. And I'm sorry. And then when you turn it over, there's the prayer of Saint Michael on the back. So people that are familiar with Saint Michael knows that he's any sort of soldiers, military types. You want to pray to Saint Michael if you're of Catholic faith. So that's a good idea to do that. When I was in the military, I carried around a Saint Michael pendant everywhere I went. Basically, my mom gave it to me before I enlisted. But so the Saint Michael prayer is on the back. So yeah, you could use it. You could use it as a bookmark or whatever. It's got little, I think, like the gold leaf around it, which looks pretty cool. And that one shipping is $9, I believe. So it's $29 total with the Dave Dorman card.
Quickly, the cover that you have for your icon, Ricker kind of looks like your boy Zach, just ever so slightly.
Well, I've actually heard so some people say it's I've heard Chris Evans, Don Johnson. Who was the other one that I heard today? There's like something else. There's been multiple sort of people keep trying to figure out if it's based on one particular person. That is not the case. It's an amalgamation sort of multiple individuals. And yeah, people just keep coming up with who they think it looks like, but I definitely did not mean it to look like your boy Zach. But if it does, that's cool.
Well, just in the eyes in particular, it kind of reminds me of your boy Zach. It's kind of where when he was younger and he'd be staring and just kind of like doing his thing, being Zach. It's awesome.
Sound like you're romanticizing a bit about him.
Oh. Well, he kind of, yeah. He's cool.
He's a good guy. I'm just thinking about the only time the only picture I can ever have of Richard in my head is the time he went on TV with that terrible haircut.
That
Oh,
it was a bad idea.
Yeah, as in the wise words of him.
It was a bad idea. So, and that's actually all the available perks you have. The other things have all been claimed out, aren't they?
Yeah, and we're working. They're actually, we might reopen. What is it? The Soul Finder perk. So I don't want to say too much in terms of the. I'm sorry, the minor order and the major order.
Okay.
That may return at some point in time because the Matt Weldon art was gone very, very fast, and it was pricey. So it was one of those things where it's like, wow, that went really fast. So let's see if we could get Matt or somebody of Matt's caliber of artist to add a little bit more, because people really seem to like that. But that takes time. So I'm working on that because it went over so well. So we'll see what happens with that.
Not to seem too strange, but Matt Weldon is in rarefied air in terms of talent. That guy's real good.
Yeah, when he initially sent his sketches with what he wanted to do, we were like, whoa, that is awesome, dude. Like, he didn't even have like the whole script in front of him. We gave him certain images to work with. He knows like the general outline of the story, and he just ran with it. And those images that he drew were just like, wow, that was really cool. And one of my, I said before, one of my favorite patrons actually grabbed the Father Reginald Crane image within like a half an hour of it going up. So I know that is it's in a good home.
Yeah, it was I first found Matt through his Punchline comic, and I just happened across the first issue in a comic shop. I'd seen it posted around and stuff online a little bit, but I just happened across it in a comic shop, and I just fell in love with that book instantly. His stuff is so good. I'm a big fan.
Yeah, and I've interacted with him via email. Tim knows him personally, but I've interacted with him in email, and he's just like a really cool, humble, gracious guy. I like him a lot.
So in the chat, Vincenzo C cropped up. Thank you for tuning in. He says, if Doug Ernst's witty and insightful YouTube videos are any indication, then this book should be a doozy. And you are not wrong, Vincenzo. You are not wrong at all. I am utterly convinced of that myself.
Yeah, well, it's one of those things. Like I said, there's a lot of pressure, and when I was writing the story, so actually, Bleeding Fool, their independent comics showcase, they put up an interview on Soul Finder the other day, and one of the questions was basically how is Soul Finder different from other books out there, and I didn't want to knock other creators or anything like that, but I said I think in many ways there was a sense of urgency there that someone who's just writing a fantasy novel doesn't have, because being part of this independent comics movement, there are limited books that are coming out, and you want to do right by the people that have faith. If you want to grow the movement, you need to have good content. And so if you have these very rare pieces or projects coming out, anyone that's a failure, anyone that doesn't live up to expectations, I don't want to say would set the movement back per se, but there are critics who would say like, see, they're all a bunch of amateurs. They don't know what they're doing. Why do you even care about them? Blah, 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 blah. And then it's just like, no. So I feel a sense of there's a weight in terms of the expectations and responsibility of living up to what my subscribers, going back a decade onto my WordPress blog, they're just like, no, Doug's going to do right by us. And so that was, I don't want to say constantly on my mind, because that would cloud your judgment or whatever, but I put a lot of pressure on myself to make sure that I did right by guys like you.
Well, and one of the things that I really want to say on this too, hang on a second. One of the things I really want to say on that too is that hang on, I lost my own train of thought.
Yeah, no problem, man. I know how that goes.
So what I was going to say is one of the things I want to point out is that this the movement, so to speak, is something that a lot of people are aware of, but I think a lot of people don't understand that it's been going on for more than a decade.
Right.
We're at an arguable cresting of a wave that's been building for so long, and you've been at the forefront of that the entire time. And it's just something that I can't imagine. I mean, maybe this is me being just a fanboy because I am a huge fan of yours. But it's something that I can't imagine that you would not do right by those people that have been inspired by you and that have been following your content. Like Vincenzo said, it's just you have an insight into the way stories are supposed to work, into the way human nature works, into the way that our subconscious drives and our faith impacts the stories that we hold true. And I don't see that being something that Doug Ernst is going to let us down on.
Yeah, so that statement right there, that's what I'm talking about. Is I know that there are people out there that essentially believe that, and so to me, if I didn't give 110% to this project, like, I don't want to get like weirdly emotional here, like you could hear it in my voice, but I really wanted to write something good for guys like you. So
well, and also you talked about surrounding yourself with professionals. You've got Brett Smith, you've got Dave Dorman, you've got Tim Lim, and Tim Lim's writing is solid. I mean, like his concepting, it's rock solid. And I mean, my goodness, have you read a funnier parody comic than My Hero Macadamia? I
No.
haven't. That's because parody is hard to do well, where it's funny, it's sarcastic, and it's not boring. That's like, anybody who's read too much Mad Magazine will tell you that it gets to be a one-note thing. But there is so much honesty that went into Macadamia that it's phenomenal. And to have those guys behind you, I mean, it's the thing. You were talking about the project, just teasing me about it just a little bit, and I was like, oh, that sounds really cool. And I found out Tim Lim was involved. I was like, that's it. Payday comes, you're getting it. You know what I mean? In July, but I want this book.
yeah, well, I want to thank you for pivoting in a way to something more lighthearted to save me from myself right there. Yeah, no, Tim's got a depth and breadth of knowledge in terms of he does his art after his day job. So he'll work whatever an 8-hour shift, and then he'll get off work, and then he starts drawing for like 8 hours or whatever. So he's a very educated guy. He's another type of, I like him because he thinks about subjects at a deeper level. And like I said earlier, he's somebody who I could trust, where I know he's going to give it to me straight. He's going to say what's on his mind. And a lot of the times he's going to come up with ideas that are simply, quite frankly, improvements on what my initial thoughts were. And so I don't want to be the smartest guy in the room. I want to feel like there's almost like, I don't want to say a competition because it's not that, but I want to be in a room with men and women who are intellectually basically operating on the same level or above me, and they're actually pushing me to be better than I normally would be. And like I said, I wanted to feel a sense of urgency. It's like when you were working out, you're exercising, and you could essentially push yourself to your limits. If you ever did, I was a cross-country runner, and you almost push yourself to tears physically. I wanted, whenever I'm writing something creative, I want to push myself psychologically to the point where I'm near tears or like the spiritual breaking point. And so when you exercise, your muscles break down. Then when they heal, you become stronger. So in my mind, I actually feel like psychologically and spiritually, people could do the exact same thing. You push yourself to the point where you're essentially going to collapse, and then you become stronger that way. So that was my sort of mentality during the creative process. Is if I wasn't pushing myself to near tears in terms of what I was trying to give the readers, then I was doing something wrong.
I think there's a real import to that too. One of the things that I think we're designed. I have a little bit of a weird philosophy on things. I believe that we're built on one pattern, right? For our physical bodies, our mental selves, and our spiritual selves are all built on the same pattern. And it's that if you don't, one of the aspects of that pattern is if you don't use it, you lose it, right?
Right.
You lose your tone, you lose muscle mass. If you don't eat, if you exclude one part of your diet, your body adjusts to not digest that kind of food, right? If you're vegetarians and vegans, they can't process animal proteins, right? So I think it's the same way in our spiritual selves, where if we don't calm our minds, or if we don't seek after truth with our intellectual self, if we don't submit ourselves before the Creator and our spiritual selves and practice humility, then we lose the ability to do that. We become flabby spiritually, we become flabby intellectually. And I think that speaks to the truth, not to get too preachy on this, but it speaks to the truth that the scripture talks about iron sharpening iron, right?
Right.
Sharpening iron, so does one man sharpen the countenance of another. And I think that's, when you were talking about surrounding yourself with these excellent people who push you and help you push yourself, that's the same. To me, it speaks to the same kind of thing. And I think it's once again, that's one of those things when you get into the background of a kind of story. In order to tell the kind of story that I know you want to tell, because how you've expressed it, you have to have that kind of an environment. And so it's cool to see that that's going on in the background. So
yeah, it's one of those things where if I surround myself with guys who are incredibly hardworking and tenacious, Tim, Brett, the Dave Dormans, the Matt Weldons, you look to the guy next to you and you see them knocking it out of the ballpark, and you're like, I can't let Tim down. Like, on top of like not wanting to let the customers down, you don't want to let your team down. And so I see Brett does the page 1 with the Humvee exploding. He colors Tim's artwork. So I'm initially like blown away by Tim's his art, and then Brett colors it, and then it like takes it to another level. And then I'm just like, I cannot let these guys down. I have to deliver the goods, because I don't want people saying, what the heck were they thinking by putting their neck out for Doug's book? What the heck? So it's like,
Wah, wah.
yeah, you don't want the womp womp to happen at all. So
in somewhat off of the story and the creation just a little bit, and if you don't want to talk about it, we don't have to, but there's been a bit of to do, and I don't understand, maybe a little bit, about Tim and everything. There are some people that have occasionally raised a little stink about that. Have you felt any guff with having him on the project?
Have guff in terms of other people's reactions, or
Yes, in terms of other people's reactions?
There has been, I would say, overwhelmingly, the response to this particular project has been very, very, very pleasing and humbling and just outstanding. Like I said before, I couldn't be more grateful for the outpouring of support. There are random comments that have been made, but my response to people is, I cannot comment on previous business relationships. I'm just not going to do that. As far as I'm concerned, with previous business relationships, one, I don't want to relitigate things from 2018. I'm focused on 2019, 2020, 21, focused on the future, looking forward. But, in terms of previous business relationships, let's say there's 3 people in a business relationship. It doesn't even have to be anything related to Tim, and there's it falls apart, or it's a band. I've mentioned Guns N' Roses breaking up before. Guns N' Roses broke up. Slash and Axl didn't, they had a disagreement. Okay, so what is the truth? There's Slash's point of view, there's Axl's point of view, then maybe there's like Duff's point of view, and then there's the God objective truth as to what actually happened, the and then one of those guys maybe has something close to God truth, but most likely, I'm never going to know it. And so when Axl and Slash went their separate ways, and Slash had Slash's Snake Pit, then he had Velvet Revolver with Scott Weiland, I didn't find myself saying, well, I'm never going to listen to Velvet Revolver because not until Axl apologizes to Slash. I saw the band because they're a good band. I don't know the guys personally. I don't know what happened behind the scenes. You know, Slash was like a heroin addict at some point in time. He had drug problems. You know, I'm glad that he got better. Axl has his own weirdo diva-ish thing. So if someone said, Doug, would you ever see Guns N' Roses in concert? Yes, of course. I'm going to see Axl Rose. I'm not going to say, well, Slash needs to apologize for it. Like, I don't want to get into the personal lives, the behind the music, VHS sort of melodrama. I just really want a good product. I want to see good music. I want to read good stories. I want good art. And if people don't like each other, then yeah, that happens in life. And business relationships don't always work out. But it would be bizarre to me to constantly be focused on the past. It's like, sorry, I'm like rambling here, but it's like you broke up with, you got in an argument with your girlfriend or your wife or something, and in 2015, well, how long is that relationship going to last if every time you try and move forward, someone's like, well, in 2015, you said, you're just like, okay, are you going to constantly beat me with this over the head like it's a cudgel for the rest of my life? Or can we actually move forward and create something memorable and lasting? And so that's my long-winded way of saying I just want to focus on doing good books and moving into the future.
I think
In
that's
other words,
perfect.
doing. Oh, sorry. In other words,
Go ahead.
doing what Comicsgate was about, which was good comics, I guess.
Exactly. I just want good comics, and I mean, like I said, if people want, I watched VH1 Behind the Music when it was, when it was popular many years ago. I don't even know how long ago that was now. I'm losing track of time, but it's like, but in terms of my real life, when I am creating things or whatever, I do not want to get sucked into behind the Comicsgate drama. Maybe somebody will make that sort of documentary or something one day, and I will watch it for sure. I'm sure it'll be very entertaining, but I would not, Soul Finder would not be coming out this year if I spent an inordinate amount of time focused on petty tit for tat sort of things that go on between people that are not my brother. I'm not their dad. They're not my dad. And it's just, so yeah, I just try and keep things on a business sort of like relationship.
I think it's important too to remember that it's in the era of social media. I'm as guilty as the next person on this, but in the era of social media, it's very simple to believe that just because you have access to somebody that it's your business,
Right.
And like I said, I'm not trying to point fingers. I've been in that situation. Like, you think you're in the middle of a conversation and then everything gets personal, and maybe it's you doing the personal. I mean, I've been there, but it's easy to forget that not everybody's business is your business, and I think that's one of the struggles that's come with the way social media rolls out oftentimes.
Right. And there's been times where people want me to weigh in between things that are highly personal, between multiple people that happen behind closed doors in their own personal time, and come to conclusions about things where it's like, why would I try and play Professor X about something that happened a year ago that had nothing to do with me? And why would I do it in a way as if these creators are my own blood and like my relatives or something like that? It's like, I don't know. It's very, very, very strange to me. I'll go to bat for my sister and my brothers all day long. And I obviously have a respect and an affinity for creators. But in my mind, unless I've broken bread with them, I don't know if they're just anonymous names on a screen, or people that I've literally never met. It's hard for me when someone asks me like to come to definitive conclusions about interpersonal relationships. It's like, I don't even want to go there. Like, that's just setting me up for all sorts of my own problems. I'm not doing that.
That's one thing. This is not totally off top of where we ended up, but off the book, and I'll pivot back in a second. But it's a weird trend, and I don't really understand it completely. When I've seen it, there's this weird tendency that people have of trying to find some sort of authority figure to say, here's this problem. We need you to adjudicate it. When there's, that seems weird to me. I mean, you've been here forever, so I can imagine that people have said, Doug, adjudicate. But I don't understand why I see that it's a thing. I can comprehend that being part of human nature. People like to pick a king, but I don't personally understand that mechanic.
Yeah, I think it's like social media is sort of like a double-edged sword, because even being able to have live streams like this, you could see people face to face. The people who are tuning in right now, they could see us, they could listen to us. And if you're watching that person on YouTube for years on end, you sort of get to know them. They share personal anecdotes about their life. You feel like you know them, so sometimes. And this goes across YouTube, movies, celebrities. You know what they show you, but for my channel, it's like I have actually tried to be. If you talk to me behind this, if you talk to me off air, my goal, I hope, is that you're like, wow, you're the same guy off the grid as you are talking to me right now. So some people actually try and accomplish that goal, but some people have personas that they put forth for, maybe if you want the most traffic on your YouTube channel, they have those, my wife watches those sort of like makeup, what are they like called, like drama videos or whatever, like, and they literally have like millions and millions of subscribers or whatever. And it's like, you only know what those people show you in front of the camera. So I think it gets dangerous when they try and act like they know the person. And I've even had instances where people have said like, we're friends, and like I'm in an awkward situation where I have to say to the person, like, I literally don't know your name. I've never seen your face. I've never heard your voice. We've never broken bread together. I'm sure you're a nice guy, but you're going down a bizarre road where you're saying that we're friends. Maybe that person's lonely. I don't know. But social media, it's like you have this ability to forge really cool relationships with your audience. But then sometimes I think people take it a little too far.
Yeah, and I think one of the things we have is I'm probably guilty of this too, but an imprecision in how we use terms. Like we'll say that so-and-so, even I know people in the real life where I'll default to saying they're like a pal. And like, well, we're casual acquaintances. I don't know his kids' names or anything, and we're very loose with those terms sometimes. And you were talking about having a story about what love is, and I think that's a similar idea where we use the word because it kind of means what we're getting at, but there's not a specificity to it.
Right.
And I think like you mentioned, I think social networking makes that worse because you can know a lot about these people that are, minor YouTube celebrities or whatever, but it's not the same as knowing them.
Exactly. Yeah, they don't know. For the most part, people are not going to telegraph or announce their trials and tribulations, things that they're going through in their personal life or whatever. It's kind of like Facebook. I'm not really on Facebook these days or whatever, but in the past, you're on Facebook and everybody's got the greatest life in the world and they're going off to Hawaii or like they're doing like all this kind of stuff. And it's like, they're not showing you their real life. This is just all a sort of fabricated reality that they're showing you. And if you start taking it seriously, or you start to believe that this person has angelic halos around their head, it's like that's not always the case. You just it's like weird because I spend so much time on social media, but simultaneously I'm kind of sending a message to like be wary of social media.
Yeah, that's a it's definitely a challenge in all of that. So.
Well, some people say like they'll put a happy facade, and there's some people that are just way over negative as well.
Yeah, there's
Woe
that
is
too.
me. I need money. There's that too.
And then one of the thing I think is really weird is when people air all their dirty laundry on social media. It's just like, some of that stuff can be between you and your loved ones. I don't have to know about all of that.
Right.
Like some pros.
We today. Anyhow, it's rolled around at 9 o'clock, Doug, which is actually awesome because like our first half hour went so fast, and I was like, I think I'm out of questions. So I was afraid I was going to end up just awkwardly staring at the screen. But you've been a wonderful guest. Thank you so much for coming on my dinky little show.
No, I'm like I said, I'm happy to go on any shows. It doesn't matter if somebody has 2 subscribers or 2,000 or 20,000 or 200,000. To me, it's just about having a meaningful interaction with somebody else or a panel of individuals. And my job as your guest is to make you look good. So if I made you look good, then that's a success for me.
Hopefully. I like looking good. But also, Star, thank you for coming on at last minute for the second half of the first hour. I really did appreciate having you on. We'll have to have you on again and talk theory. And I would tell you, Doug, if I may, a Star Storyteller on Twitter, she has a story she was giving me the outline for that sounds awesome. And that's the story in her. And I don't know when she's going to get to it, but it's going to be great, I really think.
Very cool.
So keep an eye on her, because I think there's some dynamite that's waiting to go off there. I'm not just saying that. Good elements. So, but like I said, I guess we'll go ahead and wrap up because it is about time. Again, Doug, Star, thank you so much for coming on. I am going to go ahead and give a pitch for my Indiegogo, which is not funded in a week, but that's okay. Tales of Shadow Vox Populi. There will be a link in the description for it. And it is about an urban detective, an outlaw urban detective who tries to track down some missing persons and ends up discovering some monsters. And I was thinking about the story today, and if you ever read Alan Grant's Batman and liked it, I think you'll really like this story. So there you go with that. That's where we'll call it there. Thank you, chat, for coming. Thank you, viewers, for coming. If you have any questions ever, feel free to hit me up on Twitter. My DMs are open, and I don't block anyone, even people that hate me. And thanks to guys for tuning in. And until next time, keep loving comics.